Hi again, everybody. Welcome into an all-new edition of No Holding Back. It's our 53rd episode, and it is also our second on our Channel 10 reunion tour, as I'm dubbing this. Thrilled to be joined by former co-worker at Channel 10 for a couple of years, Jeremy Ross, who's now in Chicago. Jeremy, how are you, bud?
I am good. WILX TV 10 alum. Let's do this.
That's right, man. We're gonna see how many former co-workers we can get on. You and Nick Lefebvre, the first two guinea pigs, guests of doing this. So looking forward to having some fun, sharing some stories, and getting into a lot of what you're doing. You've been out covering everything that's been going on in the world, a world none of us have ever seen. We're going to get into that. But as I like to do, point A to point B a little bit before we kind of get into some topical things, Jeremy. So you grew up in Farmington, West Bloomfield. When did the bug first get you that kind of drew you into being in broadcasting?
I had a really awesome high school teacher, Big Dave Alberry, and I started just kind of poking around, taking a look at some broadcasting stuff, mostly radio first, and it was amazing. It was awesome. It was the first time that I would just start doing stuff for school, and it just was this weird mixture of I couldn't tell what was an assignment and what was fun. And I said to myself, I'm like, man, if I could keep doing this thing that is supposed to be work, but feels like I'm not doing work, let's just keep that rolling. So it was definitely started in high school and, kept doing it through college, and some way, somehow I made it to Chicago.
Well, you've done awesome. It'd take me about 10, I'm looking at some stuff here. So you've won an Edward R. Murrow Award, you've won 4 regional Emmys, you've won all kinds of awards, and you're a sports guy like me at heart, and I'm guessing you'll take the hockey player approach and saying it's a team effort?
You bet. I'll also say that I slept with all the judges.
What? I'm sorry?
I slept with all the judges, though. So,
that
listen,
could help,
man,
too.
we can't get that serious that quick.
No.
Come on. It's a combination of, the reality is, and I know that you agree, because that's kind of the method that you and I were part of over at, Channel 10.
Yeah.
And that is, you can't do it by yourself. And one of the things that I make sure that I end up doing is the photographer that I'm working with, or if it's producer and photographer, it's all about, let's figure out how we can make you shine. The photographers that I've had to work with over the many years that I've worked have been amazing. They are talented beyond belief. And I say to myself, listen, if I'm a good enough reporter, if I'm a good enough writer, I can just let the photographer be awesome, do whatever he or she needs to do to make something amazing. And if I'm good at what I'm doing, I can make it all work. And, so like you said, it is a team mentality, and it starts with the photojournalist. It starts with, the producer I might be working with. And if all of us are doing good stuff, odds are the accolades are going to happen. And you know what? If they don't, who cares? At least we all feel better about putting our best stuff together. And, hopefully it turns out pretty well.
Good stuff. So I'm going to go back to the not serious stuff. So yes. There's a phrase that I always said to you when we worked together, the couple years we spent together at 10, and that was stick the news. And it was said as a joke, but obviously you followed that and done incredibly well with it. So you go to not one but 2 Big Ten schools. I forgot until I did a little research on you that you went to Northwestern. So you were at Michigan at an awesome time. Tell everybody about when you were there, some of the things you got to cover when you were working in sports a little bit.
Yeah, it was bizarre, man. When I look back and I just say to myself, I'm like, during those years, approximately 93 to 97, I did miss the national championship.
Yeah.
Which my brother, who attended school the year after, was part of, and he razzes me about that all the time. He's like, I was going to school during the national championship. I'm like, shut up.
You served him up.
Exactly. But, I got to go there during some hockey years that were amazing. I was able to, while at the University of Michigan, do play-by-play on radio as well as cable, which was kind of just burgeoning then, to be able to cover, that 96 squad where you had Brendan Morrison, Jason Botterill, who was Buffalo Sabres general manager.
Yeah.
I blinked, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, Bots has that job. That's amazing. The guy got drunk at Rick's and fell asleep in my lap, and he's the GM in Buffalo. I mean, yeah, exactly. By the way, he is a fantastic dude.
He is. I know him.
He can put the shots away too. Warren Looning, another guy who
Turco.
Yeah, Turco. I mean, who's on the Twitter on occasion will message me back, and that's amazing. Billy Muckalt,
Yeah.
Assistant coach over in Ann Arbor right now.
Good man.
Oh yeah, and I want to say during that period, Bubba Berenswig.
Yep, Bubba was there.
At Richland. Gosh.
Yep.
So I mean, Peach on that team as well, who's a good dude.
God rest his soul, Scott Maska.
Yes, and of course, the immortal, the immortal stick handler, Mike Legg.
Oh.
I mean, there's not a college hockey tournament season that goes by since that amazing lacrosse style goal that they don't bring that up.
No, you're right. You're dead right. I met his dad. I skated on a line with his dad at Red's alumni thing one year. And yeah, all those guys are, that was, so you probably remember this. Well, maybe not. When did you graduate? Spring of 97?
It was 97.
So you were around for the 96-97 team
yes.
that Red still to this day says was his best team he's ever had.
Yep.
Right?
Easily. And by the way, Red Berenson was the first person I interviewed for a television setting.
Really?
And I'll tell you what, I have never been as nervous. Okay. I've interviewed presidential candidates.
Yep.
I've interviewed, huge names. The most nervous I've ever been was that first time interviewing Red Berenson because I heard all the horror stories.
Oh, yeah.
It's Red's tough as nails. He will eat you up. He will spit you out. All lies.
You're right.
All lies.
100%.
Exactly. I don't even know who does his PR, who does his PR team or whatever. He is one of the nicest, kindest, most decent people I have ever met. To this day, my respect for him is unwavering. And I will tell you that I think my parents bumped into him in Ann Arbor many years after I graduated. And, my dad just, introduced himself and he said, hi, I'm the parents of someone you might remember, Jeremy, who used to work at WLV TV. And he stopped and he's like, how is Jeremy doing? I remember talking with him.
That's Red.
Lord. I was never on the team, but I was always around him. And for him to remember that was amazing.
Yeah, he's one. I'm looking around my place here. So hang on, I'm gonna do this. Works great on YouTube. Hold on.
Okay, here we go.
You're gonna appreciate this, JR.
Yes. We'll take care of this magic of editing.
There you go, brother.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yep, and then I've got I got one of him in the Blues jersey on the other wall. So you're right about that. He is one of the best human beings, man. So how did he, looking back, man? What ways did he help build your foundation as a reporter?
You know what it was, man? It was, it was make sure that you study.
Yep.
And I think that if you prove to Red that you're there prepared, that you're a professional, he's going to treat you in kind. And that's all you can expect of any boss you work for, of any person that you're working with. And, so for me, that was absolutely key. And the other thing is that, if I could interview and get through Red Berenson, the most intimidating man on campus.
Yes.
Now, not to be, man, I could do anything.
Yep. That's cool, man. So how many years were you calling games? Well, I know it's been 16 years since we've seen each other. This is as close as we've been.
Yeah.
Refresh me on how many years you called games there?
Oh yeah, it was about 2 years. So it was junior and senior year, which were amazing times to be spending time at Yost Ice Arena. I mean, it was an incredible time to be there, and just the people you meet, the skill level of the athletes involved, because that was such a golden time to watch Michigan hockey, you know?
Yeah.
And it was the kind of thing where, sure, football still overshadows it, and I get it.
Yep, I do too.
But that was such an amazing time to be there. And man, there's no atmosphere like Yost Ice Arena. There's no atmosphere like an NCAA playoff type of game. I mean, it just, you know, as soon as I got involved in that and I saw what that tournament can be like, man, you are hooked. You're going to be watching it for the rest of your life.
100%, man. Yost is when they're. I mean, I'm sure you did your share of a few Michigan State games in that place, and there's nothing like it when those two are playing. And they're both. They don't even have to both be good.
No.
But when they're both good, it's off the charts, man. I haven't found anything to beat it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and you know, it was. So I had some amazing experiences, you know, at University of Michigan. I will tell you that as a student, I was working for a guy, Derek Faust is his name, and he was basically the head of the radio station out there. And, you know, he gave me a huge break. And, you know, he's here in Chicago now, and on occasion I'll go and have lunch with him and, you know, just thank him, you know, through the roof for giving me an opportunity.
That's awesome. So how long was it after Michigan that you decided to go get a master's at McDill at Northwestern?
Yeah, you know, it was, you know, it was one of those things where in order to participate and call games at Michigan or report sports or news, you had to sell airtime. You had to essentially get donations to help the station run. So, you know, I kind of had this marketing background. And so what I did was, you know, I said, hey, it'd be cool to work in Chicago. So I ended up interviewing and getting a job at an advertising agency here, Leo Burnett.
Okay.
Worst job I've ever had.
That was your first gig?
That was my first real professional job. And
wow.
Man, it was terrible. It was just awful. Like I learned firsthand, and this is the brilliant thing about life, is sometimes you have to get a really terrible job to understand and know what a really good job is.
Yeah.
And Leo Burnett is the foundation. And I remember on occasion talking with station personnel that you and I both knew in Lansing, which was Memo Lyons, our amazing desk assignment editor. You know, I had to just spend like essentially an overnight session during a train derailment. I want to say was it Potterville? Trying to remember.
I think it was. I remember that. Yeah, it was Potterville. Yeah.
You know, and, you know, I think that she asked me, she's like, you know, man, how you doing? Because you're working your tail off and, you know, I just want to make sure you're okay. And I said to her, ma'am, my worst day in broadcasting is still so much better than my best day at the advertising agency. You know? And so that's some, you know, perspective is kind of one of the gifts that I got from working that terrible job when I first got out of school. So long story short, figured out, you know, hey, after about 1.5 years, 2 years, this job was awful. Let me go back to something that I really loved, which was broadcasting.
Yeah.
And, you know, I got a partial scholarship to go back to Northwestern Medill School of Journalism here. And, you know, it was an amazing experience. You know, it was 1 year, which was great. And, you know, so I got the master's and then headed back to Lansing.
When did you start there? You remember the day?
Oh, man. It was funny. I think I forget the exact day. I want to say it was 2002. Man, I forget the exact day, but I do remember I had to do a story, something involving shockingly cars. You know,
I'm stunned.
I know. I want to say it was some new Cadillac product. And I remember that, you know, the goal was just make air, don't screw it up.
Right.
And, mission accomplished on both parts.
You remember who you went out with the first day and shot with or not?
You know what? I have a funny feeling it was Keith.
Keith Basser.
Yeah, I have a funny feeling it was Keith because I remember someone said, they're like, do you remember who you went out with? And I'm like, you know, that guy who kind of looks like he belongs in the band Rush.
That's terrific, dude.
Shout out to Rush, by the way.
What's that?
Shout out to Rush.
I love Rush, and I know you do too. So the reason I asked that is because I remember I started June 10 of 98. The first guy I went out with, Mem, go up to Mem, who's going to be a guest on this show, by the way.
Okay.
And I said, who am I going with? And she goes, you're going with Jeff. I go, who the hell's Jeff? And, I'd been there like 2 days. It was the first story. I went out a couple days later. It was Jeff Manders. He comes out. He's got a red bandana on. His jeans are all ripped up. He's got a chain on his – who the hell's this guy?
Yeah, but, he was guns, man. I remember him.
Yeah, dude. So, and I'm just going to segue there. We'll go through a bunch of other stuff, but since we're on the topic, I mean, think of the people that were there just at our station, and then on top of that, maybe think about some of the other people like writers that were there. I mean, I don't know about you for news, but certainly sports guys, Dave Burkett, Jamel Hill was there. Who am I missing? There's a couple other ones. But anyway, but our group, what stands out from the group that we had there, man, for you, Jeremy?
I one of the things that I think for me personally, I mean, I worked with Aaron Baskerville, and what's crazy is that I think, Aaron's in Philadelphia right now, one of the top markets in America. We could talk about how terrible their sports teams are later. And including, by the way, one of America's great mysteries, Benny, and I'm just going to throw this out here, and I don't want it to totally derail everything, but it was brought up with a friend of mine, and I know you'll remember this, that when the Philadelphia Eagles finally won that first Super Bowl, okay?
Yeah.
There was that viral video of that Philly fan who decided, you know what? I'm going to eat horse poop.
What?
You don't remember this?
No.
Okay, first off, never look it up because it'll make you gag. Okay? But if you decide to, go ahead. You'll gag. And it went viral, okay? And everyone who was a football fan saw this and retched and was like, Philly fan, what are you doing? And one of my buddies in news was like, man, Ross, if that happened to us in our markets, our news director would pull us aside and say, you got to find that guy. Because somewhere along the way, that dude, Mr. Anonymous Horse Poop Eater, kisses his wife or something else. We're going to find out who's crazy enough to eat horse poop after a Super Bowl victory. And to this day, I don't think any Philadelphia media has ever identified this guy. That's neither here nor there. So, so sorry about that weird segue, but it has always bothered me that Philly fan has never been identified.
Ever?
Some dude in front of dozens, maybe even hundreds of people was like, Philly won the Super Bowl, might as well eat some horse poop. And he chowed it down.
So we need to get Baskerville on the case then.
Yes. Who is this person? What was he thinking? I have a feeling the answer is alcohol. I would hope.
A lot of it.
Or drugs or combination thereof.
Yeah, both.
This happened. You cannot erase it from the collective memories of people online.
You said you didn't want to derail it. I may derail it, but anyway.
Oh, yeah.
So
yes, sorry.
Since we're on the topic of bizarre things on air.
Yes.
So have you have like a friendship with this guy that blew the vape in your face a few years ago? Because that thing's got to be viral too, man.
Dude, you know what? Annie, I will tell you, like I am like the Mr. Bill of broadcast news live shots. Expect the unexpected and just hilarity ensues in the places you'd least expect it.
Yeah.
We're outside of like Wrigley Field and, which, depending on when you go live there, you take your chances every time because there's always some chucklehead getting drunk. No matter the time of year, by the way. It doesn't have to be Cubs season. But, we're outside. It was like some weather, story that I was doing where they actually, I think, had to evacuate Wrigley because of storms or something like that.
Oh, wow.
And, this jerk off is just kind of in the background, just, he's just doing his vape pen thing, just kind of watching, listen, we're on public streets. It's everyone's property.
Right.
You know, and I do my live shot, and this dude is just like, you know what? I'm gonna go up in this reporter's face and just blow vape at him. Which, by the way, nowadays in the COVID-19 era would be considered attempted murder.
Yes.
You know, but back in the day when this happened, this guy's like, it'd be funny. You know, so you know, he did it, and fortunately, as you know, because I remember seeing a lot of your live shots or your stand-ups where you just say, you know, listen, man, I'm just gonna plow through it. If it's not perfect, c'est la vie.
Right.
And I learned that from you, buddy.
Really?
You know, it's like situations like that. You can't not acknowledge some douchebag blows smoke in your face. You know, you got to go with it. So, you know, it's just basically like, you know, I think I remember saying something along the lines of, you know, hey, fans are out here and they're, you know, just hoping to get this game back in order. Dude blows smoke in my face. And I'm like, including that guy over there. You know, and he like, you know, I don't know, went away and whatever. But, you know, I mean, there's another live shot where I was at Summerfest in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Where, you know, they consume the adult libations like water. And, you know, some dude who thought it'd be hilarious, who looked like James, was it Hetfield from Metallica?
Hetfield.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, he just comes up to me, puts his arm around me while we're live, plants one right on my cheek.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, that one is fairly famous. And, you know, I did the same thing. I'm like, looks like I'm making lots of friends out here.
Right.
You know, I'm trying to think of what else, what other shenanigans. I mean, you know, you name it, it's happened to me at this point. And, you know, the point of everything is that you got to roll with punches. And, you know, fortunately, I have never been like truly in like major harm's way when all this stuff has been going down. Thank God.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, it's been funny. Let's keep it funny. And, you know, kind of go from there.
Are you talking about this podcast or just in general?
You know, just in general, man. You know, I mean, when it comes to life professionally, and for that matter, you know, just outside of professional, you know, roll with it.
All right, let's get the train back on the tracks a little bit here.
All the people.
Yeah, right. So back to Lansing, excuse me. So if I'm not mistaken, you and Baskerville started relatively close to each other at the same time, did you not?
Yeah, weeks, man. I think it was like, you know, I think they referred to us as Batman and Robin.
Yeah.
You know, and by default, Baskerville was definitely Batman because I was way goofier. You know, and although for the record, I'm not wearing tights. Okay.
That's good.
Yes. But yeah, I mean, you know, we started around the same time. Baskerville, I believe, UI grad, proud UI grad.
Yes.
Both of us went to Northwestern. And, you know, what was crazy is that he got a gig in Buffalo. And then I want to say months later, I got a gig in Milwaukee.
Right.
And eventually I would end up working with his dad.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because, you know, his dad would visit, you know, Channel 10 occasionally. And I'd be like, Mr. Baskerville, how are you? And, you know, Steve, who is a legend in Chicago.
Yeah.
Legend, you know, retired fairly recently. But when you're talking about a career that spans decades, you know, recently might be a few years. But, you know, I had the chance to work with him. And man, you know, Aaron is a great dude. And then you realize where he came from. His dad is an amazing person. And just blessed to work with both of them.
Was Aaron the guy you were close? I mean, we all had a lot of friends. I mean, you know, LaFave was on doing one of these before Nick and you know, we talked and him and I only spent about 6-7 months together. You and I spent a couple of years together, but it was just I haven't been in a newsroom since, as you know, as you well know. What's the well, first the camaraderie, who else, I guess just talk to me about the camaraderie, what you remember about that group that we had there in the time that you and I spent together.
Yeah, you know, it started at the desk with Memo.
Sure did.
And it was, listen, man, we got to get it done. We don't have the personnel. We don't have the technology. We have each other, and that's all we can depend on, and we need to get it done. Yeah. And, you know, it is that feeling of we're all going to succeed or we're all going to fail, that sort of is team building, and I hate using that term because that's a corporate BS sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know, it does build character and it builds friendships, and it's the kind of thing where I don't talk with Aaron a whole lot. He's not on the social media as much, and he'll laughingly say, yep, that's just the way that I roll. But I promise you that if I bumped into him in downtown Chicago, we would get a drink and it would be like nothing changed.
Right.
Because we've been through a ton together as coworkers, as teammates, as people who had to get it done. And there's that respect, and that'll never be gone.
What's it like nowadays in a newsroom? Is it still like that? You've been in a couple of big markets, obviously Chicago. What's Chicago? Is it still 3 or 4 in the country?
Yep, still number 3. Some days it feels like 1, depending on, what craziness is going on there, whether we're talking about riots downtown or Jesse Smollett doing something dumb.
Yeah.
Allegedly. It can be crazy, man. I mean, the newsrooms here, it's different, especially in the age of COVID-19.
Right.
Because you don't have that togetherness. You don't have that, bumping into people, at the water cooler, at the coffee maker. And, some of that, unfortunately, is lost.
Yeah.
And, when you talk about the entire nation learning to work at home, and I'm not sure that we're ever going to go back to totally all at the office together at this point.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, say whatever you want, saves cash to not have everyone there. They can find efficiencies in having some people in a newsroom, some people not. And maybe that stays the way it's going to stay for a while. But I think you lose the friendship, you lose some of the camaraderie. You still maintain it with the photographers you work with, and thank God for that. But, I think things have changed and they've morphed, in some cases for the better and in some cases not. And camaraderie is one of those things.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned Mem. What are some lessons that she taught you, man? And I'm not including having a filthy mouth and being dirty.
Oh, yeah.
What stands out from? I'm kidding. What stands out though from what the things that she might have helped you with in your career?
I think that when it comes down to it, Mem was a mother figure. I'm blessed to have 2 wonderful parents, and every day, I do not take that for granted, and they're doing great. They're doing fine. Thank God they're healthy.
Yeah.
But having an additional figure like that in a newsroom is well above whatever she was paid, whatever she's worth. I got to where I got today because of the people who lent me some good advice, some help, that camaraderie, yourself included. But Memo helped to make me who I am today. And it goes back to the simple idea of, sweetheart, you got to be tougher. I mean, it's just simple as that.
Yeah.
And she made it so. And the reality behind it is that we all came there, and we were all there because, our news director, Kevin Reagan, general manager, Mike King, thought that we had the stuff to tough it out.
Yeah.
But Memo helped to bring that out of us. And I can't tell you how many times, I would hear, suck it up, bucko. You got to be tougher than that, Ross. And, like there's soccer coaches that I would have that would say that. But it's like you heard that in the newsroom. And unfortunately, in the environment we live in now, that's going away.
Yeah.
But I think once you know that what's in her heart is just, again, maternal and loving in instinct, that sort of is really almost like a cheer, that's a way that she instilled toughness in who was working for her. Mm-hmm. And it paid off in the long run. And it's also I would say it helped my vocabulary in terms of understanding that the word fucko was something that you could use in the newsroom. And sometimes the word fuck was therapeutic. And,
Yeah.
and, and you know what? Bless her heart for making that a part of life.
Well said, man.
Because, you know,
I'm having flashbacks, dude.
you know it, man. And the reality is that you and I work in a business where you have to be tough.
You do.
Physically, emotionally, you betcha, mentally.
Yeah. Yeah.
And listen, you know, there are times where we're going to break down, but there's a time and a place for that. And you got to compartmentalize and understand that get your job done first, take a breath after. Yep. And that's what Mem did best. She's like, listen, get your shit together, Ross.
Yep.
Do what you got to do. Let's talk later.
Yeah. You know? I love that woman, man. She's one of a kind, man.
She is.
She is. So who do you give all the credit to all the legendary school checks you did? Who started that, man? You knew it was coming, dude.
Oh man.
How long is this thing? I got a bunch of highlights I need to get in, and I can't because your piece is 4 minutes.
You betcha. You know what, man? I'll tell you what it comes down to. I'll tell you what, Brad Pitt has won a lot of awards, okay? He's probably not still boasting about, you know, being a stoner in True Romance.
That's right, so, yes. Very nice.
Everyone remembers Floyd, man.
It's a cult classic.
Absolutely. That was, school check for me was Floyd.
The toilet paper roll was empty, basically, is what you're saying?
You betcha. You know, and the reality behind it, okay, so as a reminder, what I would do as part of the hard-hitting news for mid-Michigan was to go to every school in the mid-Michigan area.
Yeah.
Charlotte, Okemos, which originally I pronounced Okemos.
You're not the only one.
Oh, you know it, man. You know, Lansing, all over the place. Let's see, St. John's. And I know that Cole Thorpe is a huge fan of that. Yeah. And, you know, I would go into these schools and we'd talk about what they're doing awesome, what they're doing great, how they're improving their testing scores. Oh, my God, the testing scores.
How did it start? How did it start, man?
Oh, you know, here's the real deal behind that is Karen Dest, who had my job before I got there. She was leaving. And that was her series. And as part of the gig, Kevin Reagan, our news director, said, you know, listen, Ross, we want you coming in here. You're going to have to pick up school check. So I'm like, hey, you know what? It's the first gig. I got to take it. Let's do school check.
You can't be selective in your first job, man. You kind of got to do it.
You know it. You know.
How many of those did you do, man?
Oh my God. I think I lost count at like, it had to have been over 100, man.
It was a lot, man.
Oh my gosh. And it was like, you know, and it was one of those things where it's like, you know, yeah, there was a shooting downtown, but Ross still needs to go to Charlotte to do school check.
Hard hitting stuff, JR.
Oh man. With a wiffle ball bat.
What about some, all kidding aside, your work was outstanding. What are some other stories that you still, you know, remember and, you know, you'll always remember from your time there at good old WILX?
I'll tell you what, man. Memo, we can say, you know, she toughened us up and made us.
Yeah.
What I will say is the breaking news that happened in Lansing helped to make me as well. You know, I mean, we'll laugh about it, but it seemed like every year and a half there was a basketball riot.
Yeah.
You know, and we can talk about, you know, that was a student thing and that was an East Lansing police thing, you know, riling them up with tear gas and, you know, and that was because the Michigan State Spartans were so awesome at basketball and, you know, if they let the student population down that they would riot. You know, we can get into the reasons why.
Yeah.
But, you know, those were some crazy nights. And, you know, I remember, I think the first one I did, you know, I think myself, I want to say like Rachel Calderon, Baskerville, were like downtown drinking, you know, and all of a sudden it went from, you know, hey, you know, it's cool hanging out and seeing what's going on with Sparty to, man, we should probably get a reporter out here. And I think the way that it happened was I was the least intoxicated at the time. So I think, and feel free to ask Baskerville this one. I was the least intoxicated at the time. So Baskerville's like, you want to handle this, Ross? And I'm like, sure. And, I met a photographer down there, and, I managed with a lot of coffee to stay awake, and we turned a riot piece for the morning news. And, that went on the tape, and I think it helped get my next job in Milwaukee. So,
Yeah.
You can't forget those things. I think that, there was some feature stuff that I did that I thought was, pretty awesome as well. But, those riots and those situations, they make you a new reporter,
Yeah.
and not saying school check didn't help.
I'm sure you had 2 of those on the demo reel, right?
Oh, of course.
So,
oh yeah.
Any last word on Lansing before we move on? I'm leaving the floor open if there's anything else you'd like to add.
I will tell you this, that as a first market for a young buck, I will make the argument that was the best small news market in the nation. You had a really wonderful campus. You had, obviously, the state politics going on. We certainly had our share of breaking news in terms of education, in terms of crime. If I could have done it all over again, I would still start in Lansing, Michigan. So it was a great town. I love the people. Even though I bleed, blue, I loved working at MSU's campus, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.
Well, you worked there at a good time to be a Michigan fan, because they were routinely kicking the shit out of state those years you were there. So
I didn't hate that either. Although
Bobby Williams.
Yeah.
Remember that?
John L. Smith, baby.
No stupid questions.
Oh my gosh. I think I remember you had this wonderful impression of him, which would veer into Tommy Lee Jones fugitive territory.
Remember I did the segment on Mondays, A Moment with John L.
Oh my gosh, it was so good.
I told Colthorpe, I said, this was before Jason, those that don't know, Jason now a big news guy like Jeremy is and very successful. He was in sports with it. I said, dude, just go to the presser. I don't want anything serious. Just log all the goofy ass shit that he says, and I'm making a segment out of it.
And he gave you so much.
It was awesome.
Material.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a point where I was waiting for him to say, out here in practice, every farmhouse, outhouse, and egg house.
Doghouse, hen house, outhouse.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. He was like a caricature of a football coach. It was amazing.
He was a good man, and I enjoyed his time. All right, so we move on to, you go to Milwaukee. So correct me if I'm wrong, and I know you will. You went there you weren't just reporting, you were on the anchor desk there, right? And that's a hell of a jump, man. For those that don't know, I'm going to guess at that time, Milwaukee was certainly a top 40, right?
Yep. It was, depending on where you looked at, it was around like 35, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So Jeremy makes the move from 105, 106, whatever the hell we were, to that size market. Take us through some of the highlights of that, man. What stands out from those days in Milwaukee?
And Benny, I'll tell you, one of the craziest things is, when you're on the road and you're doing so much stuff, a lot of traveling and what you're doing kind of gets blurred.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you go to the same place, it finally hits you like, oh man, I've been here and I kind of remember a few things. What's crazy is that when the University of Michigan, I want to say like 97, I think that they played one of their hockey tournament games at the Bradley Center.
They did, when they lost to BU.
Yes, and that was an amazing game with amazing NHL stars.
Chris Drury was the star headliner for BU,
Yep. And so, I have this vivid memory of being there for radio, helping to call the game, and an incredible disappointment. And then I go to interview in Milwaukee, and I'm walking around, I'm like going, man, this is so weird. It's familiar. And then it hits me. I'm like, man, I've been here. I've done a game here before.
Yeah.
And so, I went to interview there, and, what's crazy is that, a news director who I'm friends with now, Bob Klinkenbeard was the,
Klink was your GM?
Well, Klink was the news director there, and this is fantastic. This little piece of info here.
Wow.
I interviewed there, and Klink was deciding between me and another guy, and he chose the other guy.
Okay.
And listen, man, it's all good. It worked out great for him, and it worked out great for me because Klink left. He got a job, I want to say, in Florida.
Yeah.
And, another news director came in and invited me in like 8 months later, and I ended up getting the job there anyways. But, so it was crazy. So, to anyone watching out there who has aspirations of, working in news and working in markets, understand that, listen, I failed once in the place that eventually would hire me again, So that's pretty bizarre. But, listen, I got the job in Milwaukee. I had this weird background there already. I called a game at the BC, which was awesome.
It was,
and, I go there, and one of my absolute idols as a reporter was a guy named Boyd Hooper, who works in Minneapolis.
Okay.
And, I've seen some of his early work. And, back in the day when we didn't have a lot of social media and the ability to share stories, it was just getting to the point where people were starting to post that and share stuff. I had no idea where Boyd worked before he went to Minneapolis. And, so I was talking with, the news director there and, talking with, one of the photographers, who was amazing there. And I just said, hey, can you give me an example of some of the best work this place has ever done? So he breaks out this tape, puts it in, and I realize the dude that I loved used to work here. This is all lining up pretty cool. And so I had this amazing, video inventory of, amazing reporter archives to take a look at and see writing and production and these amazing techniques that other people never had access to. When you hear about athletes who, will look at tape and, try to figure out how, game plan goes for other teams or, what makes another athlete great. That's what I was doing in Milwaukee. And, so it all worked out really awesomely there. We had a ton of crime, in Milwaukee, and it was such and remains such a segregated type of city, almost as much, if not more so than Chicago. And, one of the things that I remember interviewing with, the news director about before I got there was, man, listen, I'm a good general assignment reporter, meaning, I can do a lot of different stuff for you. But if you're only focused on having me report on crime, you might have better people in your tape, in your tape selection there. So, of course, he hires me and puts me right on crime.
Of course.
Of course. So it was, again, going back to what Mem said about, you got to get tough, sweetheart, sink or swim. I had to get tough, and it was sink or swim. And, I learned a lot. When you work in some of the most difficult neighborhoods in America, the most segregated neighborhoods in America, where the opportunity is so different from, even blocks away. You learn a lot about people, you learn a lot about humanity, you learn about how to treat people. And, the lessons that I learned when I was in Milwaukee about all that was something that I was never going to learn in Farmington, West Bloomfield. I wasn't going to learn in Lansing, Michigan.
Yeah.
And I learned, and I'll tell you what, I got my ass kicked a lot by other reporters there. Really good other reporters there. And, my news director was like, listen, man, you gotta get better. And you know what? I just put my nose to the grindstone, took my ass whooping, and tried to figure out how I can avoid it the next time. And eventually I learned. I had to learn in a hurry, and it worked out okay.
That's great stuff, man. Two things. You may know one of them. The other one I don't think you'll know. But the Bradley Center, I was there in the American League when I was with Lake Erie. That building was originally built to be a hockey arena. Did you know that?
Yes.
Yeah,
and
I figured
it
you knew
should
that.
have been.
Huh?
Yeah, it should have been, man.
It was so steep. It was like that. And Gretzky, the Oilers played the Blackhawks in an exhibition game there. And Gretzky was talking, this came from the Milwaukee people. Aaron Sims, you might know Aaron. He might have been there when you were there, the radio guy.
I didn't cross paths directly with him, but I know the name and I know the voice.
Yeah. So first time I went in there, I got the crash course on that. And they were hoping to get an NHL team there. As you know, things usually with me, those that don't come back to either hockey or Seinfeld or Tim Hortons. So the other thing, JR, so Clink, the first job I had in the business was a news writer at DIV.
Yes.
And he was my boss. Quick story. So Mort was, they remember the 158, 258, and 358 updates that him and Carmen would do?
Yep.
So I was there in 94, 95 for a couple different stints. So one day, Tom Okers, who could have wrote for Nightly News, was the guy I learned how to write from. He said, Ben, why don't you take the update? Mort's doing it. So I write the update. I leave it on the chair. Mort comes in, reads it. Next thing I know, I feel a set of hands behind my head like this. And they continue to squeeze and continue to squeeze. And it's Clink. And he goes, where'd you get your law degree from, Holden? I go, what are you talking about? And I can't move. I mean, he's a big man, as you know, and those that know him know. And he said, you just accused the guy of murder, you idiot. Use allegedly next time. True story, dude. I didn't know he was there when you went there.
Yeah. You know, I'll tell you what's crazy is that,
great man.
like, you know, I mean, listen, I promise you, like 1,000 times over, you know, and I think you'll agree on this one, is that fate does a weird job of helping us through things, even if it doesn't deal us a good hand. To this day, I've never held anything against Clink, even though he should have hired me. I mean, we're best buds on Twitter. I kid you not. Like he'll send me like golden retriever videos all the time, which I love. Yeah. You know, but yeah, and I'll tell you what, to this day, if he ever had an opportunity to hire me, I guarantee you he would. You know, and it's weird how this business works, but you know, that's tremendous. And I will tell you that what's hilarious is that when I interviewed with him and I talked to the guy who got the job rather than me, and I said, you know, hey, was it weird that, you know, Clink didn't take you out for lunch? And he looks at me and he's like, yeah, he ordered. And I looked at him and I'm like, sandwiches in his room, right? And the guy's like, yes, that is so weird.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Small world, man. Small world.
Yeah.
What are, and I'll, you know, similar to Lansing, what are, you talked about, you know, they throw you in the crime beat. Yep. Some stories that, again, that you'll never forget in your time in Milwaukee.
Oh, man. I mean, you know, Milwaukee stuff runs the gamut. You know, I will tell you that, you know, some of the stuff that sticks out, you know, I mean, I was there during a very weird period of court cases and crime. Like I came right after the Make a Murder, you know, stuff was actually occurring. So like, you know, what is it that, and I apologize if I screwed up the actual title, but you know, the murder that occurred like in Manitowoc, that like is on Netflix. I think it's Making a Murderer or whatever it is. And, you know, like I came right after that. And one of the stories that I did do, and I was one of the first reporters at the courthouse to get a criminal complaint for, was the Slender Man murders. If you recall what was going on there, because it was two young girls, if I remember correctly, who, you know, decided to stab like multiple times another young girl to within an inch of her life because they believed that an imaginary character, Slender Man, asked them to do this.
Wow.
Do you recall any of those stories?
I do remember that now that you tell me, yeah.
And what's crazy about all that is, you know, I mean, you do that story and it's one of those things where I think I remember in the live shot basically saying, of all the criminal complaints, and God knows I probably would read at minimum 5 a week for the many years that I was in Milwaukee. Of all the criminal complaints that I've ever read, this stood out as the most bizarre in the, you know, 6-7 years that I was in Milwaukee. And, you know, years later, I get like this deluge of messages. Hey, do you know you're in the HBO documentary on Slender Man, right? I'm like, no.
No, I
you know,
didn't.
like, you know, I have random people messaging me. They're like, was this really you? I'm like, yes, I was taller then. You know, but, So that's one that I can't forget anytime soon. I did a series, not like School Check, called
Nothing like that.
yes, called Wisconsin's Most Wanted.
Huh.
And, so basically it was just profiling a super bad guy or super bad girl. And we'd work with U.S. Marshals on, just sort of who this person is, how the community can help catch this person, put them away. And so that was very surreal. I got to work with some of the best and brightest in law enforcement and just kind of learn some of the tactics that they use. And that was really helpful in, just for a young reporter to understand, sort of what law enforcement's job really is while they're out in the field, what sort of things they're looking at. And the access that I got there was actually pretty amazing. But, Milwaukee also is a hell of a sports town. I covered a lot of Brewers news, from when Ryan Braun became the league MVP to when Ryan Braun became, the butt of many jokes involving, urine testing.
Yep.
And, so that was pretty surreal and crazy as well.
So for a guy that went there not knowing or not covering or really wanted to cover crime, obviously that was a huge part of your time there, man. So that's cool. It's, again, the way things work out sometimes, or it's fate. So you get to Chicago, man. You mentioned you touched on it a little bit when you went to Medill there at Northwestern. Yeah. Was that a place you always wanted to be? Was that a target of yours?
It really always has.
Okay.
Unfortunately, in the job that you and I are in, so few people get to, go back home or are able to land really where their heart desires.
Yep.
A lot of times you'll go to a place and life says, this is a good place to hang out.
Yeah. And,
so to be able to get back to Chicago was helping to fulfill a dream. And, I spent some of my best years of life here. When I went to Medill was amazing. Even though I hated my job when I first got out of school here, I loved the people that I hung out with. I grew to love this town, and there's so much good that's happening here. I will tell you, and I think that it's with almost every professional. I'm still earning my keep here. I don't feel settled. I still feel like there's a lot of things that I need to do to, become better at what I'm doing here. So the journey is not over. And, but I hope to remain here at least near term. And, we're in an environment right now where who knows what's going to happen, but what I know is that if I remain tough, physically, mentally, keep focused, keep doing good work, be the good Boy Scout, and that is help others, and again, be flexible. My hope is I can stay here, but we'll see.
It's good stuff, man. How many years you been there now?
I'm approaching 6, which is crazy. And
so,
yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you've seen, man. Personally, when everything started, I haven't worked since the 29th of February. It's the last day I traveled. And so I've been home I'm into month 5 now. So my point is when I started like March, I was constantly glued to the television set, man. And I think most of the country was, because I don't think things started to splinter until, this is my opinion, until late March, early April. And then it just went friggin' haywire.
Yep.
So you're out there, man, and I give you so much credit, and you and Cole Thorpe and all the folks that we worked with that are out there still grinding, doing it every day. I know you've seen some shit, man. What's it been like to go through that? It's got to be the point of your career where you've never covered stuff like this. I mean, we've never dealt with this. So what's it been like going through some of this for you, man, out there in the field?
Man, when it comes down to it, I watch a lot of cartoons when I get home to decompress.
Yeah.
So, that's the reality behind it. I think that everyone out there, who's doing what we do, and people who are seeing what we see, have learned that if you don't have good, solid coping mechanisms, if you're not talking with loved ones, if you're not talking with, professionals, making sure that not only physically you're okay, but mentally you're doing okay. I feel like, you could be in a lot of trouble. And, I will tell you that, the station that I'm working for is providing guidance and tools to make that a reality. I know a lot of places are. The reality behind it is that, you have to figure out for yourself what you need. And sometimes, that takes a while. Um, I have, in the short time of COVID-19, social unrest and riots, protests, I have seen, especially this first Saturday night following, the death of George Floyd, and when the protests and the violence started hitting Chicago, we were out on Michigan Avenue. And anyone watching this, if you've been to Chicago, you've been on Michigan Avenue, Mag Mile, just south of the Chicago River. You've walked over the river. You've walked on Wacker Drive. You know the area I'm talking about. Yep. We saw a group of about 7, 8 dudes bust open the Blackhawk store. And, the glass outside that store is about 6 to 8 inches, something along those lines.
Yep.
And the force required to do that was insane. I'm with a photographer. I'm with another photographer who's out there just kind of being our eyes and ears. And, we heard cracking, we heard crashing. And what I found out after the fact was one of those people who was busting through the window just, pulled out a Glock, started shooting. We're 60, 70 yards away. Now, again, in hindsight, I just, imagine being on Mag Mile, someone just pulls a gun and starts shooting. And they busted through that window and they took whatever was not locked down. And we saw this play out safely, as much as we can be safe, under cover of, I think it was a combination of a cement bench and I think a sort of recyclable trash bin that you'll find around Chicago, about 60 to 80 yards away. And, for me personally, I needed to make sure that the crew was no closer. But the photographer I worked with, he had to get help. He reached out to a therapist and is dealing with anxiety issues. And I think that there were some underlying problems before then. But when you see this stuff play out in real time right in front of you, it helps crumble, and I think a lot of coworkers that I'm working with are dealing with those sorts of thoughts, those sorts of concerns. While all this is going on, we have to be careful not to contract COVID-19.
Yeah.
And so there is layers upon layers of anxiety, layers upon layers of depression, which is always coexisting when you're talking about, mental issues. And, when you get home at the end of the day and you see stuff like this, even though you did yeoman's work, even though, this is the type of situation that a newsie says is so important to make sure that the public is aware of, because they're still in the process of prosecuting some of these people who ruined people's livelihoods.
Yeah.
Advantage of, quite frankly, a very real, reasonable social issue, trying to get equality, social equity for people in and around Chicago, the United States, taking advantage of the death of George Floyd, using it to try and get Blackhawks jerseys.
Right.
These aren't the people protesting.
No.
But, it's our job to do that. But at the same time, you get home, you decompress, and, you fall into depression, which is a completely normal thing when you see, sort of, an act of, violence like that, and it's hard to shake. And people have needed help. And, the era that we live in is unprecedented. And you called it, man. It's tough.
Yeah, it gets to me just hearing you talk about it, man. And I have great respect for what all you as members of the media do and in the news side of it. And you know, I sit here and watch stories like I know you see and you hear talk about it. And it's like, you guys, to me, unfortunately, in many cases, I mean, I think of the reporter that was in Minneapolis, the one they arrested.
Yep.
I mean, why, give me your opinion on why you feel that the media, the media is a target as well. Why is that? What the hell happened?
You know, there was, and you bring up a really good point. It wasn't always like this.
Yeah, no.
And, you know, and let me immediately say that, especially for my work in Milwaukee, I have worked with and seen the best and brightest in law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
And we are so lucky to have some of those people that I worked with, many of them U.S. Marshals, some of them on the local level, county, you know, city police, who are doing amazing work and quite frankly, just keeping the fabric of society safe for everyone. And they should be rewarded.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that you have some of their counterparts not doing what they should.
Right.
And they're starting to get caught on camera. They're starting to get caught on cell phone. And, you know, I wish that that wasn't the case, because there are really good people who get dragged through the mud because of what their chucklehead, you know, comrades are doing. And, you know, it makes me sad. And the problem is that, and I understand from the perspective of law enforcement, when you're in a highly charged situation where there are thousands of people jumping around, many of them so angry at you, even though you didn't necessarily do anything
Right.
to invoke that violence, that you're on edge. And sometimes the defense mechanism when you're on edge is to arrest first, sort it out second.
Yeah.
And I think that that may have been the case with the reporter in Minneapolis, who, by the way, I think graduated from Northwestern.
Played basketball there too.
There you go.
Yeah.
And, you know, who was just doing his job.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, there was a riot officer in Louisville, Kentucky, who was whipping paintballs at another reporter who was clearly going live.
Saw that.
Yeah, when this was happening.
Yeah.
Now, I will tell you, I haven't looked at it recently, but I'm not sure that that officer was disciplined above and beyond, you know, being off the job for a little while, you know, because what we saw, and by the way, when I say we, not just people who are also media professionals, but the world saw,
Yeah.
it was clearly a violation, and then sees little to no follow-up. And I don't want to say necessarily that, you know, it needs to be a criminal matter, but we need folks in Louisville, we need folks in, you know, Minneapolis and everywhere, that when cops do good work, they need to be rewarded.
Yes.
When they screw up, they need to be disciplined, and people need to know.
Mm-hmm.
People need to know that there's accountability, and that's part of the problem. And so I see the anxiety, I see the great stress, which police officers are always under, because you never know who's friend and foe. And I understand how you can make some mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Arresting that reporter, obviously realizing that that's a reporter, even though I think that the average person probably could figure that out.
Yes.
With the camera crew.
Yeah, that's kind of a giveaway.
You know, and again, I'm doing my best to put myself in their situation. And,
Yeah.
you know, in these crazy times, we haven't seen a situation like this. So I want to make sure that we, as best as we can, as reasonably as we can, that we got to give benefit of the doubt. But I feel like, especially over many years, because of the advent of cell phone cameras, the internet being able to immediately upload these videos, show things live, in many cases without proper context, I think that police are more on edge than ever. And a lot of times, you know, that leads to jumping to conclusions, which for an officer, can mean the end of his or her job. It can also mean the end of an innocent person's life. And I think that while that has helped make things more visible, I think in some cases for law enforcement, it has hurt their ability to do their job. And I think that that's something we're struggling with.
Yeah. Well said, JR. You always had a way with words, man. And
try, man. I also use curse words, but I kept them out of that for that segment there.
I understand.
Yeah.
Let's shift to a brighter note. Talk to me about this card collection you got, man.
Dude, you know,
let's go. I'm a collector too, man, so I want to get into that with you a little bit.
Let me tell you something, man. In an era where, you know, and listen, man, I know you're in the same space as me, but like freedom, you know, is getting out there and running. And, you know, sometimes enjoying what's in your backyard, you know, because sometimes the goal in life, given COVID-19, is just not dying, which is sad.
Yeah.
You know, the reality is one of the things for me that I love doing is heading to the mailbox, checking out the mail. It's sad, but, you know, listen, man, that's the reality we live in, you know?
Yeah.
I go running, I go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
I Zoom with friends.
Go to Timmy's.
You know it. and I head to the mailbox.
Yep.
And so one of the things that I've been doing, and again, it's all about, you know, how do I keep this space up and running, and, you know, give myself just little pieces of support, is I've kind of deferred a little bit to my childhood. And I've gotten back into collecting vintage sports cards.
Nice.
And I will tell you, man, listen, you know, I'd love to be able to put that energy into dating. That ain't happening anytime soon, man.
No.
You know, so I've reconnected with my inner nerd, which I've always reconnected with anyways. And, you know, I've gotten back into vintage sports cards. You know, I've been expanding to not only hockey, but also, you know, like soccer. And, you know, so what I've been doing is, you know, I've been just sort of collecting these older sort of cards. And, you know, one of the things that I recently also started doing was, you know, getting into like Joe Louis's like old 1930s, 1940s cards. And you know, so what I've been doing is contacting these like retailers in Italy and, you know, in Amsterdam, and, you know, figuring out how to speak their language, and, you know, buying those cards and getting them in the mail. You know?
That's awesome, man. I'm not going to lie to you. One of the things that I'm considering doing, you know, I'm a positive guy like you are, but I'm realistic too. And right now, the way things are looking, it's not looking good for a college football season. So one of the things I'm considering doing is, because you can see a little bit behind me, and like you have, I have cards. I don't know that I have as much cool stuff as you do in the card department, but I have a lot of memorabilia, is doing something online. I mean, I built a YouTube channel. My son helped me. I'm like, if there's no season, I'm not calling a game till probably January. Let's be honest. Yeah. So again, I'm being realistic, JR. I mean, I'm not being negative, but I love that, man. So how many do you just do cards, or do you do things like I have, like frame things, or what do you do?
You know, it all depends. I try and keep things mostly to cards because they're easy to stash, easy to store.
Yeah.
You know, but I will tell you that somewhere back at the homestead with my folks rests a 1984 Tigers championship puffy sort of sports sign.
Nice.
Proudly hung in a bar, which I will never get rid of. And you know, I certainly have some signed paraphernalia, memorabilia from the old school Tigers. And, you know, what's amazing is that when you go online and you kind of revisit all the things that you kind of were interested in getting in your childhood, and you come to the realization, oh my God, I can actually get that now. Yeah. It's actually pretty amazing because, like, you know, one of the things that I was just taking a look at was, man, I remember back in the day, I really wanted that Alan Trammell and Lou Whitaker rookie, but I could never find it. Right. And, you know, like now on the internet with eBay, I'm like, man, that's right. There was a 1978 Burger King edition. Yeah. and you can, finally get that for, 20, 30, 40, 50 bucks. So, that's one of the things that, I've kind of like taken a little joy in, is kind of like the things that you couldn't find as a kid now really available. And you know what? The ability to get that, find it in the mailbox, bring it back into the homestead, has provided a little bit of joy in a world where it's tough to find that joy.
Yeah, that's great stuff, man. I know you have a putting it as a strong passion is an understatement for dogs. Where did that all start and come from, man?
Yeah, I'll tell you, man. It's and the craziest thing is, I don't even have a dog.
I didn't think you did.
I know, and I'll tell you, man. It's the reality behind it is, and you get it, is our schedules are our schedules are so crazy that you can't have a dog sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I'd love to, but I'm with you on that. I hear you.
And so, one of the things that I've been doing is, when I can actually visit my parents back in the day, when my brother and I left home and, went to college, or, when I was working in Chicago, my folks were like, you know what, we're going to get a dog. And, growing up, I never had a dog. I remember asking my folks, hey, can we get a dog? And they're like, nah, you're going to get a brother. I'm like, not what I asked for. Not what I asked for. And you know what? You learn earlier that, you don't get everything you ask. They finally got a dog. And so when I started visiting them, I came to the conclusion that dogs are awesome. Unconditional love, unconditional support. Are they brain surgeons? Nah. But you know what? Especially during the time that we're living in, you're not going to find that almost anywhere, And so just the comfort of being able to hang out with the dog, visit, pet, whatever you want to call it, that's the kind of feeling, emotional support that only an absolute trusted loved one, family member can provide. And you know what? It's a wonderful thing. And, there are many people who would agree with me that it's almost God's gift of sanity, minus, of course, picking up the poop and making sure they don't chew themselves into oblivion.
Yes.
But it's a wonderful, wonderful thing to have. And so while I do not have a dog myself, what I've found is that, the people who do in an era when you could have actual dog gatherings, believe it or not, that was a thing.
Yeah, that happened, right? Yeah.
That did happen. And by the way, when did all of a sudden we start living in the Avengers timeline where we're talking about this, like as the snap, like pre and post? Like, man, this is weird.
It's kind of like, do you like Seinfeld or not? I can't remember.
We followed Seinfeld back in the WILX 10 days.
We sure did. But did you happen to watch his Netflix special or not?
No, I did not. I did not.
I don't want to take away your point, but it only made me think of that. And Seinfeld said in there at one point, he goes, we don't really know when texting started, but it just started. Kind of like you were saying with the Avengers and the way we're living.
Right, exactly. Because people are talking about this. Yeah. I think it was called like the obliteration or whatever, but, like where there was a pre-snap where, a portion of humanity goes away and a, post-snap and, obviously not as serious, but, people are now talking, it's like, before the virus and, after the virus and that sort of thing. But anyways, before the virus, there would be like dog get-togethers in Chicago. And you would meet the most amazing people and dogs, and the stories behind them were awesome. And, you got to spend 5 minutes just hanging out with someone else's dog, giving the dog a treat, pet. And, I don't have a dog of my own, but you know what? That was a great fix. And it was cheaper than drugs. So there you go.
What's that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, so we're not doing that now, but virtually, I'm a huge fan of, Someone wants to share their dogs, I'm sharing it with you because it provides you that moment of escape, that moment of just, someone is out there caring about you, and we could all use a little bit of that.
No doubt. Just for the record, I'm a Husky guy, and I wanted to name
Tommy
myself.
Boy?
What's that?
Like Tommy Boy Husky?
No, I didn't mean. I like Huskies.
Okay. Kidding.
I knew what you meant.
Yeah, thank you.
It's already got a name. One day I'm going to have one.
In a little coat. Sorry.
Take it off, dickhead. I'm serious. Geronimo. That's what I'm going to name him.
There you go.
Hopefully I didn't offend anybody.
No, I'll tell you what, my dad, growing up, that was my nickname.
Really?
Geronimo.
Why is that?
You know what? He was a huge fan of early American history, and saying Jeremy on occasion gets a little bit boring.
Yeah, I can see that. That's why I always called you JR. I never called you Jeremy.
Everyone calls me JR. JR, Lori Jane Gliha invented the nickname J-Ro.
That's good.
Take off from J-Lo.
Kind of hippie. What's she doing, by the way? She's still in the business?
Yeah, absolutely. She was working for Al Jazeera on the network.
Really?
Yeah, and now she's working in Denver for the Fox affiliate out there.
Wow. So just as we close here, coronavirus and all that, what are the things that in Chicago and Illinois, what's it like down there for you guys now?
It's
over there, I should say.
Yeah, it's very similar to Michigan. I think that maybe that we are doing a little bit of a better job in terms of the reopening so far. Our numbers are decent, although recently we have gotten over 1,000 in new cases recently. We haven't reached sort of that spike level, so far so good. Early in the outbreak, we were a hot zone though.
Yeah.
And living in those circumstances and working in those circumstances was tenuous, man. Like, I mean, even to this day, you'll hear so many, thoughts, theories, and guidelines about, if you're outside, we think you're okay. You wear a mask, you should be good. Inside appears to be more dangerous. And, we adopted those guidelines pretty early, and we were able to see the curve flatten that other communities are in fear of right now. But the problem with everything that I'm saying, Benny, is this. I'm using the words we think,
right,
and should be.
Yeah.
And the reality behind this right now is we're giving our best guess.
Mm-hmm.
And, I wish that people out there really understood and pay attention to the wording, because when it comes down to it, these are guidelines. These are educated guesses that science is throwing out there. And, I joke with you about when people ask me what I'm doing this weekend, and I say, I'm trying not to die, guys. If you can stay home, you don't have critical things going on, do that. Until we know for certain, protect yourself, protect your family. If it's not essential, hang out.
Yep.
The end game, pardon this pun since we talked about Avengers earlier,
right.
But the end game is the vaccine.
Yeah.
And, the more and more we hear from experts, the more and more we think that, yes, there's going to be more than one. Yes, it's coming. The earliest it's going to be is by the end of this year. Who knows how long it's going to take to test and distribute.
Yeah.
But, we're talking about a series of months, okay? And the more you hold out, the more you stay healthy towards that finish line, the more you're going to save yourself, the more you're going to save your family. And by the way, the more you're going to save in medical costs.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you're lucky enough to not get a terrible case scenario. I mean, I interviewed a guy whose family thinks that his medical bills will be upwards of $2 million.
Wow.
Wrap your head around that for a second.
I can't.
Now, the hope is that that insurance will pay for it. I don't even want to be in that situation.
No. No.
For what? And when it comes down to it, for what? You want to go to a bar? You want to go shopping? $2 million, is that worth it?
Yeah. Good way to end it, brother.
Hey, man, it's been a pleasure. It's been an honor. And,
yeah, it has.
Man.
Good to see you, dude.
It's always a pleasure. When it comes down to it, I know that you're going to do it. And for those watching, just keep grinding, man. You know, this is the time to be safe. It is the time to just get tougher. And if you can do those two things, man, we're going to get out of this okay.
I feel the same way. I'm right there with you, man. So, Jeremy Ross, CBS 2 in Chicago. Is that how I would say it if I was reporting for you guys? CBS 2 Chicago?
Yeah, you betcha, buddy. You betcha.
Longtime friend, former coworker, part of our Channel 10 reunion tour here on episode 53 of No Holden Back. Until next time, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again.